Welcome, everyone. I'm Ron Baker. I'm the founder of the VeraSage Institute, and I'm thrilled to be back at the Successful Bookkeeping Conference. Thanks for having me again. In this presentation, I know in the past I've spoken about value pricing, and I've spoken about the subscription business model. Today, I want to talk to you about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's about innovation, really, when you get right down to it. But it's also about what Walt Disney has taught me. He's taught me actually quite a bit. He was an extraordinary person, as I think you're going to learn in this session. But he left us an incredible legacy. And I'm not just talking about his movies and the amusement parks. I'm talking about his business ideas. A lot of this was inspired just by reading about his life and reading about others who worked with him, who you will meet some of those people, and also attending the Disney University, which Walt created when he started to build Disneyland in the 1950s. He thought it was really important to have a university, a corporate university, that put people through an educational regimen and taught them about what Disneyland stood for, what its goals were, what its objectives were, its service ethic, its purpose, all of those things, some of which I'm going to give you insights about today. But there's just a ton of lessons in here. And I hope you enjoy this as much as I do delivering it. But I attended this Disney University back in 1997, and I actually wrote a 3-part series about it, which you can find on my LinkedIn page. I'm one of the LinkedIn influencers, so you follow me and you'll be able to see all my posts. And there's a 3-part post called Earning My Mouse Ears. And it was all about what I learned at the, I think it was a 2.5-day course or 3.5-day course at Walt Disney World that I attended in 1997 about Disney quality service. In other words, how Disney delivers a fantastic guest experience, because they don't use the word customer, they use the word guest. And it was quite enlightening. I want to take you back to the origins of Disneyland in my time with you today. And it started by, there was, just like we attend conferences like this one that you're attending, and you probably attend some others too, there is an annual, at the time, back in 1953, there was the amusement park annual convention. This one happened to be held in Chicago in October and November of 1953. And there were 4 people attending. And there was more than that, but the 4 that Walt wanted to get in front of, or he wanted his executives, more specifically, to get in front of, were considered at the time, and again, this is 1953, so, we're talking 71 years ago, but it was William Schmidt, who ran Riverview Park in Chicago, Harry Batt, that ran the Pontchartrain Park in New Orleans, and Ed Schott, who ran Coney Island in Cincinnati, Ohio, not the one in New York, and then George Whitney, who ran Playland at the beach in San Francisco. These were considered, for the day, the best amusement parks out there. These were the gold standard for amusement parks. And Walt had an idea for Disneyland. And the only thing he had to convey this idea was a drawing that one of his animators helped him with one night. They worked on this all night, and Walt worked with the animator on it. He told him his vision, told him about the landed themes he wanted to have, and he had it drawn. And this is actually a pretty grainy picture. I apologize, the best one I could find, of the original drawing that they did. And Walt's executives took this drawing to this convention in Chicago to present it to these 4 amusement park owners. Now, they filled them up with caviar and some Chivas Regal as well, because they really wanted to get the truth out of them and really get their feelings about what they thought about this new venture that Walt was proposing. And Walt was back in New York I think with his brother Roy at the time, trying to get financing for this dream of his, because this was a dream, and it was an odd dream because, of course, Walt was really well known for making movies, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and all these other hits that he had in the 30s and 40s, even into the 50s. But he had this idea for this park that he wanted to do, but it was going to take a lot of money. So his people set up a meeting in a suite with these 4 amusement park owners, and they walk through the plan for Disneyland. Now, if you've ever been to Disneyland, you know what it's like. You know that there's only one entrance that you walk through, and you kind of walk through a tunnel, and it kind of a main street kind of emerges at you, kind of like the opening of a movie, right? And that's all very deliberate. Walt had incredible thematic, aesthetic that he really understood how to do things that really attract, that made attractions lifelike. And these executives went through and they explained to the 4 park owners what the vision was. And the feedback at the end, folks, and by the way, one of the people also in the room, he wasn't a Walt Disney employee, but he was a guy named Harrison. Buzz was his nickname, Price. And Harrison Price worked for the Stanford Research Institute. And SRI at the time was a very famous economics firm. And I was always fascinated by this. So I was thrilled to be able to get a hold of Price's book because he really goes into depth. SRI was the outfit that Walt hired, and Buzz Price led the engagement. And they are the ones that selected the location of Disneyland. They're the ones that selected Anaheim. And it was a bunch of orange groves, and they cleared them all out. The land was pretty cheap, but that was SRI's idea to locate it in Anaheim, Southern California. They also came up, they were economists more than anything, and they also came up with the pricing for Walt. So they had the entrance price, which I think literally when it opened was like 50 cents. But then to get on the attractions, you had to buy tickets. And those tickets, if you remember this, depending on your age, they had A through E tickets, depending on the excitement of the ride. The most exciting rides were E tickets, E for exciting, right? And that was a scheme that was developed by the economists that worked with Buzz Price. And anyway, so they lay out the plan for Disney, and here's what the 4 experts say to the Walt Disney executives and, of course, Buzz Price. They say, well, look, this is all the proven money makers for an amusement park are conspicuously missing from this Disneyland. There's no roller coaster, there's no Ferris wheel, there's no shoot the chute, there's no tunnel of love, there's no hot dog carts, there's no beer. You can't get alcohol at Disneyland unless you're a member of Club 33. Then they serve alcohol. And I believe the California park, of course, now serves alcohol. But at the time, there was no alcohol in Disneyland. And worst of all, there's no carny games like the baseball throw and other carny games that you see at the local fair. Customers are likely to leave with money left in their pockets. This is no good, right? Overall, there isn't enough ride capacity to make a profit. They looked at the rides that Walt was proposing, and they were kind of small compared to what they were used to having. And they didn't think that was a good thing. And they said, and custom rides that Walt wanted to build, like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, things like that, will never work because they'll cost too much. They'll constantly break down. They'll result in angry customers. Only stock off-the-shelf rides are cheap enough and reliable enough to do the job. And besides, and this is the key point, folks, and besides, the public doesn't know the difference or care. That tells you something about what the 4 experts thought about the public that they were privileged to serve. They also said that most of Mr. Disney's proposed park produces no revenue because it will be expensive to build and maintain. Things like the castle and the pirate ship, they're cute, but they aren't rides. So there's no economic reason to build them. They're not revenue generating. You can see the theme here, right? This isn't going to work. And this is from the experts. No doubt they were experts at amusement parks. What they didn't understand was that Walt wasn't building an amusement park. He'd never used that terminology at all. He was building a theme park. They also said there's too much wasteful landscaping. They had lots of different flowers from around the world and all these plants, and it was professionally landscaped. They spent a fortune on landscaping. And the interior finishing concepts of the restaurants are too expensive. Hot dog and beer are all about anyone eats at an amusement park. So why would you go to the expense of making the New Orleans restaurant and all this fancy stuff? Town square is loaded with things that don't produce revenue. The town hall, the fire department, the square itself is kind of ridiculous. It's a waste of space. The horse cars, the horseless carriages, and Western wagon rides, all those things they had will cost so much to run, they'll lose money, and they don't have enough capacity to make a profit. And you can't operate, and this is another amazing thing, you can't operate an amusement park year round. It can only open for about 120 days a year, which is the only way to go, right? Walt wanted to run it year round. I mean, weather permitting. And Walt's design had only one entrance. Well, this will create a terrible bottleneck. You have to have an entrance on all sides in a parking lot that surrounds the park so people can get in from wherever they have to park. But that wasn't Walt's vision. They also said the Jungle Cruise idea will never work because the animals will be sleeping, because they're nocturnal and they're not going to be visible most of the time, which Walt did understand, and that's why he did the animatronic animals on the Jungle Cruise ride. But he had some live ones in there too. And they also told him, you'll lose money, by the way, providing all those little design details and nice finishes, because people are going to vandalize your ride vehicles and they're going to destroy the grounds no matter what you do. So you may as well go cheap. Now that tells you something about the attitude of the experts and how they ran their park. It's fine for them, but it wasn't Walt's vision. And they also said Walt's screwy ideas about cleanliness and great landscape maintenance are economic suicide. He'll lose his shirt by overspending on things the customer really never notices. Now, folks, think about that. If you've ever been to Disneyland or Disney World or any of the Disney parks anywhere in the world, Euro Disney, Hong Kong, Japan, China now, one of the first things that you notice is how clean the parks are and how well maintained they are. And that work is done overnight, 24/7, 365. The parks are meticulous. They're they're really well maintained. Everything, the light bulbs, everything. And these guys didn't think that that was sensible because, hey, who's going to notice that? You can see a general theme here in these experts. They think the consumer is a moron, right? They're not going to notice it. They're going to vandalize your rides. But as David Ogilvy said, the famed advertiser, founder of Ogilvy and Mather, famed advertising agency, he said the consumer's not a moron. She's your wife. You can't have the attitude that your customers are stupid. That's not going to. I mean, you can do it, but it's not going to take you very far. And Walt understood that, and they summed up by saying to him or telling Walt's executives, bottom line, Mr. Disney's park idea is too expensive to build, too expensive to operate. Tell your boss to save his money. Tell him to stick to what he knows. Just keep making movies and leave the amusement business to people who know it. Well, of course, it's so fun to read the history on this because, of course, we know how the story ends. But there's still an incredible lesson in here, which is experts are experts about the past, but entrepreneurship and vision are about the future. Entrepreneurs literally, if I can use some poetic license here, entrepreneurs are historians of the future, if you really think about it, because they create the future we live in. If you've got an iPhone in front of you right now, or indeed any type of smartphone in front of you, or an iPad, or maybe a laptop, but certainly an iPhone. We all have Mr. Stephen Jobs to thank for that. He was the one that envisioned that, saw that before anybody else did. Now, of course, there were other phones out there, but he redid it and put his own mark on it. And of course, everybody uses one today, whether it's an Apple or not. So these entrepreneurs that have this vision, in other words, they see it before anybody else does, they're usually ridiculed. And I could have brought you any of a number of other entrepreneurs. I didn't have to pick Disney. I could have brought you Conrad Hilton, could have brought you J.W. Marriott, could have brought you Henry Ford, could have talked to you about Alfred Sloan of General Motors, a whole bunch of people. The story's kind of the same. When somebody rises up to do something new, they're ridiculed. It'll never work. The experts all tell them. Experts in the industry tell them that it won't work. But entrepreneurs, they're stubborn people, and they have a vision, and they're going to carry it out. And that's exactly what Walt did. And in fact, another fascinating story that Buzz Price tells in his book, Walt's Revolution by the Numbers. By the way, Buzz is an economist, so he gives you all the numbers. He's got charts and charts of numbers of Disney attendance year by year, and how much money and all. I mean, he's a numbers guy. But he tells a story about working with Walt, and he said the worst thing you could do if you're in a meeting with Walt Disney and Walt proposes some idea, could be anything, could be, I want to do an electric day parade, for the holiday season, for instance. And if you said to Walt, well, Walt, no, you can't do that because he said that was a career limiting move. You were putting your job on the line. He'd probably fire you on the spot. You had to take one of Walt's ideas, and even if you kind of didn't think it would work, you had to think about it in terms of yes, if. In other words, yes, Walt, we could do that if we did this first, or this, and this. Then we could test this idea. But you couldn't go into him and say, no, that won't work. No, because. And I just thought that was a fantastic lesson. If you live your life with a yes, if attitude rather than a no, because attitude, then it's going to open up vistas of creativity and discovery for you, even in your own practice, even in your own bookkeeping, accounting practice. And I really, really liked that lesson. And I learned that from Buzz Price and his book. The other thing that Walt taught me, which I think is one of the most incredible lessons that I've really taken to heart, and it's taken me a while to really, really understand what he was getting at with this, was his idea of plussing. He wanted to constantly plus the park. In other words, enhance the customer experience, constantly give them things that would delight them or surprise them with little touches. I mean, you see this with the hidden Mickeys. There's a whole group of people that know where all the hidden Mickeys are, but they don't, because they constantly add new ones. There's people that trade Disney pins. That's literally, I forget how many billions of dollars a year that generates, but it's amazing. I mean, you could go to Disneyland 50 times in 50 days, and you will see something different each time. I promise you. In fact, if you ever do get to Disneyland, I would recommend, because I think they still have this, there's a tour. They have various tours at all the Disney parks that you can take. And the one at Disneyland is really unique. It's one of a kind, because it's the only park that Disney really lived to see. He designed Walt Disney World and picked the land and all that, but he died before it opened. But Disneyland he saw. And there's a tour called Walking in Walt's Footsteps, and a docent will take you around, and he or she is going to point out things to you that you would never, ever see on your own. I don't care how many times you went to that park. She'll show you buildings that you don't see. She'll show you things that you will never see unless it was pointed out to you. And that's kind of the magic of the place. There's so much there that is just historical, and it's got a story behind it, and there's a reason for it. And the docents are really well versed in all things Disney. I mean, they have to pass a test. If you know about the London cabbies have to study what's called the knowledge in order to be certified. Now, of course, Uber has kind of screwed up their business model a bit, but the London cabbies know everything about London. They know where everything is because they had to study it. And the test is really hard they have to take. Well, it's the same thing with these docents. And I took this tour with my brother, and we were the only two on the tour. That's how nerdy I am about all this. But it was fantastic because we had this docent, and she was incredibly knowledgeable, and she knew everything, and she was amazing. So I highly recommend, if you ever go to Disneyland, take the time to take the tour, walking in Walt's footsteps, because the whole premise of the tour is this is why Walt laid the park out the way he did. They show you the park through the eyes of Walt Disney's original vision for the park, and it's fascinating. Anyway, his idea of plussing is, he said, we can make a picture, but once you make it and put it in the can, it's done. There's nothing I can do with it. Snow White's a dead issue to me, but I wanted something that was living, something that could grow, something I could keep plussing, making it better, adding attractions, adding things that would delight the customer with ideas. And the park was that for him. Not only can he add things, but even the trees will keep growing. The thing will get more beautiful every year. He says, I can't change that picture, but that's why I wanted the park. And I think this is such a critical lesson for our profession, because I think in all the talk about AI and all of the technology that we get so wrapped around, and it's all wonderful, and I love it. I love all the tech, but it doesn't replace that human touch. It doesn't replace constantly plussing the customer experience. And folks, it can be the little things. I'm not talking about you spending $100 million on a new attraction. It can be just simple things that we do for our customers and express gratitude for being privileged to serve them, and constantly plussing the experience, just showing them little, send them thank you notes for their business, or if they refer somebody, or just, meeting with them just to talk about their business and their challenges or their opportunities. All that's plussing. It doesn't necessarily have to be big innovations or new services. It can be new services. That's part of plussing as well. But it's just the attitude of plussing. If you adopt that culturally and really embed that inside your firm's DNA and your people, then I think that creates a great customer experience, which is an enormous competitive advantage. Because when Walt did want to start one of the parades, he wanted to do a Christmas parade. His executives pushed back on him and said, Walt, that's too expensive and it'll cost too much. And he got visibly upset and said, listen, do you know how much it costs to get a customer to come to Disneyland? He said, we don't want just them to come once. We want them to come back and hopefully bring other family members who are also going to come back. And he said, the only way we can do that is to continuously plus this park, continuously provide the guest with delight and new things, new discoveries that they can make. And the parade is part of that. Yes, it's going to cost money. He said, but do you know how much it costs to get a customer to come to Disneyland in terms of marketing and all the things that we have to do? And this is very true. And it's been well documented across all different industries that it costs somewhere between 5 and 11 times more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain one. Now, I can tell you specifically for accounting firms, and I would even say for bookkeeping firms, it does cost, according to the AICPA, 11 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain one. Because when you acquire a new customer, you have to go through the learning curve of learning their business, learning their accounting. You might have to clean things up. they're going to be more price sensitive because you're new. But if you keep a customer, they're going to know you, they've worked with you, they're less price sensitive because they know what you're capable of doing. It costs less to serve them because you're more familiar. So you've already climbed down the learning curve of working with them and their systems and maybe their technology or apps or all of that. They're also more comfortable working with your team members rather than just wanting to always deal with the owner or the partner. So it's a lot less costly to serve a long-term customer than it is to pound the pavement and constantly acquire new ones. Walt understood this without doing any research at all. He intuitively understood how much it costs to get a customer to come to that park. And in fact, I will tell you this, the first thing when I was at Disney University in Walt Disney World, one of the first things the instructor said after all the pleasantries and introduction and all that, he rattled off this statistic. He said 89% of the people that are in the parks right now have been there before. And when you think about that, that's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. In other words, only about 10% of the people in a Disney park are there for the first time. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. It's why going your first time is such an event, right? It's like your first haircut or something. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that because the AICPA has done all sorts of studies on this and said it costs us 11 times more to acquire a new customer rather than just retain an old. That means we should spend, a lot of our marketing dollar not chasing new customers, but keeping the old ones happy by plussing our offering. And that's an incredible lesson from Walt Disney. And it's one that really, really applies if you're trying to adopt the subscription business model. The other thing that's really interesting is when Walt started to build Disneyland, he created the Disney University. And this gentleman, Van Arsdale France, he was the founder of Disney University. He was the first person in charge of it and started running courses. They had an old home somewhere on the grounds as they were constructing the park. And everybody they hired, even the workers who weren't Disney employees, maybe they were earth movers or contractors, electricians, plumbers, they all went through Disney University. And in fact, that tradition holds today. They have a 3.5 day, I think it is, or maybe it's a 2.5 day course called Traditions. And everybody who works at Disney, including the CEO, goes through that program, no matter what, because that's how they share the company's legacy and its wisdom of the ages and its vision and its purpose and all of that. And Van Arsdale was the first one. He wrote a book about it called Windows on Main Street. And there's Van there with his in front of his window. If you know about Disney, you know that the windows have names on them. And those names are famous people. They're Disney legends. They're people that contributed incredibly to the parks. And he got his own window. But his book is really interesting. But he was the first one to lay out the theme park's operation philosophy. And it was this: safety was concern number one at all times. Guest safety. They didn't call them customers, they called them guests. And courtesy is number two. And the fact that we are doing a show here. This is why he called his team members or staff, I hate that word staff. That's why he called them cast members, because you're in a play. You're part of the cast. You're either on stage or backstage or off stage, but you're part of the cast. You're putting on a show here. And that was really important to Walt. We're selling happiness. We're creating happiness and memories, by the way. And notice that capacity, which was later changed to efficiency, comes last. That's really important part, because as important as efficiency is, we can be efficient with things, technology. That's why I'm a big fan of AI and chatbots and all apps and the cloud and everything that makes us more efficient with things. But when it comes to people, and this is a human to human business, we're in a relationship business, you can't be efficient with people. I've never heard anybody describe their marriage as efficient. It would bug me or scare me if I did. You can't be efficient with people. We have to be effective with people. We have to listen to them. We have to show compassion and empathy and all of those things. And that has nothing to do with efficiency. In fact, it's the antithesis of efficiency. By the way, so is plussing, because when you're innovating, when you're creating something new, it is almost by definition inefficient. And that's why Mr. France here put efficiency last, because safety, courtesy, and putting on a show was far more important, because that's what created the Disney magic. That's what differentiated them from all the other amusement parks that were out there. They weren't an amusement park. They were a theme park. They didn't have rides. They had attractions and adventures. In fact, I think the only one that's got the term ride in it is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But everything else is referred to as an adventure or an experience, an attraction, things like that. So the language is really important. And another important part of this, and this came a little bit later, but a cast member is encouraged, in fact, they're almost incentivized to go off task, to be on purpose. In other words, if they see somebody struggling, like famous story, and this is just one of a million, but a little kid goes up to one of the carts to buy an ice cream cone. And as he walks away, he drops it, and it's on the hot pavement. If the cast member running that ice cream stand sees that, he's completely authorized to get a new cone and ignore the line that he's serving, or she, and run over to the kid and give him that new cone and maybe a balloon to boot or something. They're encouraged to do that because that is what Disney calls moments of magic. And when I attended Disney University, I got to go underneath in the tunnels where everything runs. It's where all the garbage goes. And that's how you move around the park. If you're a cast member, you go into this incredible network of tunnels, because Disney parks, or Disney World, is actually on the second floor. There's a whole underground beneath it. And in some of the hallways in these tunnels, they have moments of magic. And there's letters from guests, and there's pictures, and just all the things that they do to create moments of magic. One I'll never forget is some family literally drove across country, and with their, I think it was 3 kids, 2 boys and a daughter, I think it was. And the daughter got sick. She got the flu, and she's holed up in the hotel room the whole time. That's a miserable thing to happen. And Disney found out about that just by talking with the parents when they checked in or something. They found out about it. And that little girl got every character, came to the hotel room. They brought her an autograph book, like a passport that they have. Everybody, all the characters signed it. They brought her gifts. They delivered the food to her, all in character. I mean, they tried to do their best to take really a crappy experience and turn it into something of magic. And there's literally a million stories like that. And they do that over and over again. So that's what they mean by you're going off task. In other words, don't worry about efficiency if you're on purpose, and the purpose is to create happiness or moments of magic or memories. And those memories last. And I promise you, that little girl has probably grown up since then and taken her own kids and maybe grandkids to a Disney park. The other thing that Disney makes you think about is the revenue model question. What are you asking your customers to pay for? And I just wanted to show you, it's a non-Disney example, but it's a good one, and it's Fender. Fender happens to be the largest guitar manufacturer, I believe, in the world. And the CEO of Fender was being interviewed, and he was asked, what's a challenge about selling guitars? And he said, well, one of the big challenges with selling a guitar is people are really excited to buy it. They've probably got lessons lined up. And he said they take lessons for the first 30, maybe 60 days. He said, but over 90% of them quit by 90 days. The guitar goes in the closet or under the bed. He said, even worse, they might gift that guitar to their cousin or a friend or somebody. And he said, and I'm out another sale. And he said, I realized that we were limiting ourselves if we just thought that our customers were buying guitars. So he created this thing called Fender Play, which was a digital app. It was launched in July of 2017. By 2020, around the start of COVID, they had about 200,000 subscribers. And I think it was about $150 a year right now to subscribe to Fender Play. I'm not sure what it was when they launched it. It was something less than that, probably even half that. And it's got a video library of thousands of guitar lessons for all different types of skills. So beginner, intermediate, advanced, probably above advanced. And during COVID-19, when we were all locked down, Fender Play did something really, really smart. They said, we will give you a free trial period. I think it was either 30 or 90 days. And you can come in, and if you have access to a guitar, you can watch our videos and learn how to start playing the guitar. And when they announced this, within the first week, their subscribers went over 1 million. It shut down their servers. There was such a rush because we were all shut down, right? We were making bread or learning languages. Well, apparently a lot of people went to play the guitar. And as of 2024, now they have about 930,000 subscribers. I looked it up. And they have about a 5% churn rate, meaning they lose about 5%. That's actually pretty good for a churn rate, losing only 5% of your customers. But in 2020, first year of COVID, through 2023, each year, they sold more guitars than they ever had in their corporate history. And Fender's been around for a while. And they also figured out that subscribers to Fender Play purchase 40% more, just like Amazon knows that if you're a Prime member, guess what? You spend 8 times more with Amazon than an average customer who's not a Prime member. 8 times more. It may even be higher because that number is a couple years old now. No doubt, if you're a Prime member, you spend more because you don't have to wait to fill your cart up with $25 or whatever so you get free shipping. You just hit buy it, you get free shipping because you're a Prime member, right? A lot of stuff I order comes same day or even, or the next day. So the point is, the CEO of Fender was asked, okay, you did all this. What did you learn? He said, what I learned from this is we're not selling guitars at Fender. At least that's not what our customers are buying. Our customers are buying musicianship. They're buying the ability to play the guitar at the level that they aspire to. It's a personal transformation, folks. You're taking somebody who can't play the guitar to somebody maybe now who can play a guitar at a party, impress their friends, just like do the same thing with piano or any other musical instrument. But you're selling musicianship. That's a completely different mindset than thinking we sell SKUs, we sell guitars. And I think this has got a lot of lessons for us as professionals because we're also in the transformation business. We help our customers grow healthier, wealthier, and wiser, right? As professionals. Now, I know doctors take care of the health, but we help with making people wealthier and wiser about their finances, which I think leads to better health or can contribute to better health. And I mean, we help them grow their business. We help them sell their business for a higher price. We help them retire, plan their retirement. We help them plan getting their kids into college. If you do estate planning, then you're helping them leave their legacy after they're gone. These are all personal transformations that have nothing to do with your services. They have nothing to do with how many accounts they have, how many employees, how many transactions, because you're touching the customer's soul. When we're guiding these types of transformations, the customer's the product. We're changing the customer. We're not just delivering services anymore. I think we really need to get out of that mindset. And Disney taught me that. The other thing that's really clear, and I love asking this question, is what would happen if Disney started bookkeeping firms or accounting firms or CPA firms? Do you think the pricing would be the same? Do you think the customer experience would be the same? Would they try and up that customer or plus that customer experience? I mean, when I look at other industries that Disney has moved into, such as cruise ships, right? They've completely transformed cruise ships. They go to their own islands. They have custom vacations now that they do. They do a lot of things other than just movies and theme parks, and they've plussed it, and it's not any cheaper. Disney weddings, a Walt Disney World wedding, that's a six-figure event. And I even know of some of the executives from Walt Disney, especially Epcot, that have moved into the funeral business. What if Disney ran funeral homes? Do you think going to a funeral would be the same? What would that look like? They've completely changed that industry. Now, not Disney. Disney's not into funerals, but executives from Disney have brought some of that plussing concept to the funeral home business, where the funeral is no longer a place to mourn. It's to celebrate life and, lifescaping and videos and pictures and all of that. They've just transformed the experience if that's what people want. Anyway, I just think it's a really interesting question to think about what would happen if Disney started bookkeeping firms. And the other thing is the language. Werner Erhard says all transformation is linguistic. If we want to change our culture, we need to change our conversation. And I've already explained to you how Walt did that, but it wasn't an amusement park. It was a theme park. It wasn't about, he didn't have staff. He had cast members. They didn't have rides. They had adventures or attractions. And they didn't have customers. They had guests. You're a guest like you're a guest in my home type of thing. And I think our language needs to evolve as well. And I just thought I'd show you this. I know I showed this to you in prior years, but just how we think the language has evolved from an hourly billing firm to a value pricing firm. And now, if you're doing a subscription-based model, notice that it's no longer about customer. It's about member. You're a member of our firm. That's a totally different attitude, right? That says we're in this for the long run. We're not just going to look at the math of the moment. It's not about even education anymore. It's about customer success. We're pricing transformations. We're not pricing the services that we do. We're pricing the outcome of those services, getting them to being able to play the guitar. That's a transformation. The thing about us that separates a professional from, say, a company like Fender. Sure, Fender can probably get you from beginner to intermediate to an advanced guitar player if you so desire. I mean, after all, the person that's being transformed has to want to transform. That's why we guide them. We don't deliver them. We guide them. But what we're doing is we're doing those transformations serially. We can do them over and over and over for our customers because there's always something to work on, whether it's their personal finances, getting their kids into college, helping them retire, helping them with their business. There's always things to work on to optimize a business, save money or help with pricing or whatever it might be. And these are just some of the words I think need to change when we're talking both internally and externally to our customers. It can no longer be about efforts and hours and services and scope of work. It's all about transformations, and you're a member. and we're going to take care of you. And whatever you need that we can do, because you can't do everything that we can do, you're covered. And that's why I think language is so important. So that's why I wanted to share this chart with you. And the other thing is, I'd like to show you a clip, and it's from a movie about Walt's life. And I forget the title, excuse me, but I know they show this in one of the parks, but it's all about Walt. And this particular clip, which runs about 7-8 minutes, is about his last days. And the reason I'm showing it to you is because it's so powerful. You're going to see Walt at the opening of this clip at what was known as Mineral King, which is in Sequoia National Park in Southern California. They were going to develop that part of the park, Mineral King, it was known as, and they were going to put in a ski resort and make it family friendly, and have kids, ice skating rink and all this kind of stuff, because Walt really thought that Disney could bring some magic to the skiing business. And they ended up not doing it and got a lot of environmental pushback. There's a whole story there. In fact, we interviewed a couple on our show, on my radio show, The Soul of Enterprise, who wrote a book specifically about Mineral King and the decade-long fight it created with environmentalists, because the environmentalists didn't want Disney to do that. And Disney ended up backing out from the project. But that's where he is at the start of this film. In this film, you're also going to meet some of the 9 old men. They're legendary. They're all Disney legends. They were the original animators that worked on all the early movies. We're talking Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, all of that. You're also going to meet his daughter, Diane Disney, who passed away, but she's in this clip as well. And keep in mind that Walt passed away in December. It was December 15th of 1966. So as you watch this clip, you can just put the time. You can put the time in context. He died in 1966. In fact, he died in the hospital that was basically across the street from the Disney studios. And I think this is an amazing clip, and I hope you enjoy it.
We hope that we can develop it in such a way that the families can come up here and have access to this great, wonderful wilderness area.
Journalists who attended the event were struck by Walt's appearance. Walt looked gaunt and drawn, but no one suspected there was something far more serious ahead.
I was doing a storyboard, and the room was filled with my crew and so forth, and he got in a coughing jag, and his face turned red, and he kind of bent over, and I said, "For gosh sakes, Walt, why don't you give up smoking?" And he says, "Well, a guy's got to have a few vices, don't he?" Something like that.
He was going to have surgery on the back of his neck. That was set. They were going to fix this problem that the old polo injury was causing. And my mother came to my door one morning. She said, "They took an x-ray of your father's lung and they found a lump the size of a walnut."
Walt's doctors recommended that he immediately undergo surgery.
Then we turned to him and said, "Are you worried about going to the hospital?" And Walt said, "You're damn right I am." And we thought he was going in because of his old polo injury, but that wasn't it.
So we were all there sitting in the room. And the surgeon came in after the surgery and he said, "Well, it was just as I suspected. The tumor had metastasized. I give him 6 months to 2 years." Of course, it was like dropping a bomb in that room. To me, the most poignant story of this whole last time is his last visit to the studio lot. Just looking at this place that he had built, these people that he'd brought along, done these amazing things, and knowing he had to leave it all behind.
And then he stopped about 20 feet away, and he turned, And he said, "Goodbye, Mark." But he never said that to anybody before.
Roy Disney explained to me that he, his last visit to Walt in the hospital, he said, "I knew I was going to lose my brother then." He said, because here he was talking very excited about the Florida project. Walt saw the complete map, evidently, of the Florida project on the ceiling above his bed.
As we got off the elevator on the floor, and I saw Ron go striding into Dad's room and then come out with his arms up like that, as though someone had pushed him back. And when we went into the room, I don't really, I mean, Dad, you know, his hands were on his chest, and he was gone, and Uncle Roy was standing at the foot of his bed, and he was massaging one of Dad's feet, just kind of caressing it, and he was talking to him, you know. And I don't know, it sounded like something like, "Well, kid, this is the end, I guess," you know, and that sort of thing. And I saw his love as I've never seen it before.
It was 9:30 a.m. on December 15th, just 10 days after his 65th birthday.
I cried in my wife's lap. It put an end to a marvelous era.
And I lay awake all night long. I couldn't sleep, trying to think what's going to happen next.
They announced Walt's passing, and then they cut in Julie London's voice, and she sang the Mickey Mouse Club song. M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-A. I had to pull off the road because my tears were blinding my ability to drive.
The news of his death reverberated around the world. Newspapers from New York to Paris reflected on his immense role in the shaping of 20th century entertainment.
Just an ordinary man with the most extraordinary talent of making you feel that you were important, when in actual fact he was the one.
This was a man that had one foot in the past because he loved the nostalgia and used it in many motion pictures and television shows to get through to the public, and one foot in the future because he loved the technology.
You drop him in a glass of water, and like a Japanese flower, he expands in all directions. So it's the expansive Disney that's moved out in the world in so many different ways and has done nothing but good.
I mean, here is a man who had scant education. You know, his parents were not exceptional people except in their character. He was not much of an artist, but somewhere came this amazing factor of knowing what drama and comedy was. And so I'm afraid we're just going to have to say, well, Walt Disney, genius, period.
So, folks, that's I know it's a tough clip to watch, but a couple of really important lessons about that. Obviously, Walt is not frozen cryogenically. People, joke that he's in the park somewhere in one of the ice cream carts because they froze his head or something. No, he was cremated and he was buried in the cemetery in Los Angeles. But as it said, his brother finished the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom. Epcot came later. I think the Magic Kingdom, like it said, opened in 71. Epcot, I think, was 80 or 81. But when they opened the Magic Kingdom, there was a VIP tour. And the dean of Disney University at the time was a guy named Mike Vance. If you're interested, Mike Vance wrote a couple books about being the dean of the Disney University. Anyway, they were shepherding these VIPs around, and a lady turned to Mike Vance and said, "Isn't it too bad that Walt didn't live to see this?" And the only thing Mike Vance could say was, "He did see it. That's why it's here." I mean, Walt saw it on his deathbed. He was laying on, and that, from all accounts, that's a true story. I've read that many different places. He was laying on his deathbed with his brother, and he was looking at the tiles in the hospital room's roof and explaining the layout of the Magic Kingdom that is Walt Disney World today. He had it all in his head. He did see it. That's why it's there. The other really interesting thing is about this, just to close the circle, I started by showing you how all the experts told Walt that what he was doing would never work. Well, and it was one of the 9 old men in the clip that you just saw, when they went to their first Pixar movie, which was all digital, computerized animation, the old man told the Pixar people, this was interesting, but this isn't how animated movies are made. You have to hand draw the cells. This will never work. And when Pixar put out its first hit, Toy Story, one of the same guy walked up to the Pixar people and said, "I was wrong. I was wrong. You guys, this is incredible." So just goes to show you that you can be an expert in something, but knowledge is about the past. Entrepreneurship is about the future. That's the lesson I want you to walk away from today. If you've got a vision, if everybody's telling you it can't be done, you're probably onto something. Because if an idea makes people uncomfortable, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea, but it does show you that it's an idea that upsets the status quo. And I'll take a bet on those. Like when we tried to get firms to move from hourly billing to value pricing in the early days, and folks, this goes back to the early 90s, people told me I was nuts. This will never happen. And it's happening across the professional space. Now, technology is a big driver of that. Certainly AI is a big driver of that, because all technology eats hours. And if our business model stays, we sell time, then we have a big problem. But don't listen to the experts, because if you've got a vision for the future, pursue it. That's what Walt taught me. And this is how you can find me. This is our radio show, The Soul of Enterprise. You can find all of our shows. We just did our 500th show. We've been on the air for 10 years. And you can find them all on our archive page, and all on various topics. We've done shows on Walt Disney. We've done shows on pricing and all sorts of other accounting type topics and had business authors on and other authors. So you can find all those there. And of course, if you want to get a hold of me, best place is email, ron@bearsage.com. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me at thesoulofenterprise.com. If you're interested in value pricing, it'd be the orange and purple book there, Implementing Value Pricing. If you're interested in the subscription business model, and those two topics were my prior sessions at this conference last year and the year before that. My new book, Time's Up. You can join a Time's Up Club. There's a forever free membership. You get instant access to audio. It's not an audio book, but it's an audio of me talking about each chapter of the book, and also my colleague, Paul Dunn, who wrote the first 7 or so chapters. He's also talking about each chapter and what we put in and what maybe some ideas we left out and things like that. And that's all available. And I'm happy to talk to any of you. I consider you all colleagues. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.